Hi folks, welcome back. Dennis Fatoza, aka Def Noodles, and today we're going to be talking about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, the movie of the summer, or so Hollywood would like you to believe. The film has an absolutely stacked cast, but it also has several casting decisions that have raised a lot of eyebrows. In my last video covering this movie, we discussed Lupita Nyong'o being cast as Helen of Troy and why so many people questioned that decision, whether you agreed with Nolan's decision or not. It has sparked a massive debate online, and that conversation isn't going away anytime soon. The other casting decision we briefly touched on was Elliot Page. Now, out of respect, I am going to refer to Elliot Page by that name throughout this video. Elliot Page, formerly known as Ellen Page, is a female-to-male transgender activist and actor who now presents as a man. Personally, I still believe Elliot is a woman. However, out of respect for Elliot's decision to change names, I'll use the name Elliot throughout the remainder of this video. That said, my opinion on Elliot's biological sex has not changed. They are still a woman, basically. Anyway, yesterday was the premiere of The Odyssey, and the entire cast was there. Since then, a ton of footage from the event has gone viral. People have been making memes, posting screenshots, and questioning several of Christopher Nolan's creative decisions, particularly those involving Elliot Page. The first clip that's been making the rounds is this one featuring Elliot Page. Needless to say, that clip is cringe-inducing, to say the least. One of the biggest observations people have been making online is Elliot Page's physical stature. Elliot is reportedly 5'1", or about 155 centimeters tall. By comparison, Achilles is traditionally described as being around 6'3", or roughly 190 centimeters. Obviously, there are a whole host of other physical differences that people have been pointing to, but the height and overall physical build are by far the most obvious. That said, it should be clarified that Elliot Page is not actually playing Achilles, despite all the speculation that's been circulating online. Elliot is instead playing Sinon, a cunning Greek soldier and master manipulator in the Trojan War saga, who is famous for deceiving the Trojans into accepting the wooden horse, ultimately sealing Troy's fate. Now, while Sinon does not appear in Homer's original Odyssey, his most famous story comes from Virgil's Aeneid, where he serves as one of the central figures in the deception that brings about Troy's destruction. Mythologically, Sinon is also canonically Odysseus' cousin. According to reports about Nolan's adaptation, Sinon is portrayed as a pivotal character whose strengths lie not in physical combat, but in persuasion, manipulation, and deception. Now, when you think about it, that's a much more believable character profile for someone like Elliot Page to portray on screen than a legendary Greek warrior. Nobody, and I'm telling you absolutely nobody, would buy Elliot Page as Achilles or any larger-than-life Greek hero charging into battle. Elliot simply doesn't have the physical presence for that kind of role. That's not even meant as an insult, it's just reality. The contrast becomes even more obvious in the footage from the premiere that's been making the rounds online, where Elliot is being escorted around the event by a security guard who looks nearly a full foot taller and appears to be almost twice the size of Elliot Page, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. You have someone portraying a character from one of history's most legendary warrior cultures, yet the physically imposing figure in the situation is a security guard who's there to protect Elliot. The irony practically writes itself. Now, beyond that, another image that's been going viral is a cast photo from the premiere where Elliot Page is standing directly in the center, surrounded by the rest of the cast. Elliot is 5'1", as I mentioned earlier. The size difference is impossible to ignore. Nearly everyone else towers over Elliot, even the women. And it's one of those situations where reality keeps smacking Christopher Nolan's casting decisions right in the back of the head. Regardless of how much Hollywood wants audiences to suspend disbelief, there are some things people simply will notice immediately, comically. Now, that naturally brings us to a broader conversation about Elliot Page portraying a Greek soldier in this film. Beyond the historical questions surrounding the casting, it's interesting because about a month ago, another clip of Elliot went viral where Elliot was asked about masculinity and what it means to her. I watched that clip when it first started circulating and considered making an entire video about it, but at the time, it didn't really fit into anything I was covering. Now, with all of this renewed attention surrounding the Odyssey, I actually think It provides important context, not just for this casting decision, but for Hollywood's broader understanding of masculinity, gender roles, and what I see as an increasingly inverted view of reality. Now, that said, rather than front-loading the discussion, though, I'll just let the clip play and we can talk about it on the other side.
Healthy masculinity to me is, or even just something I've felt as transitioning, is like leaning away from whenever there is some sort of impulse or expectation you've put on yourself to like shut down or conform in a way that usually feels like this, like I am closing off. I remember kind of being like, oh, Elliot, maybe you should, talk with your hands a little less, or, maybe in pictures, because ever since transitioning, now I'm like, Johnny, I am smiling in those photos. Whereas I used to be so, I could barely look at a photo of myself. I was always like, and now, and I'll be say a dude's like, hey, are you Victor from Umbrella Academy? And we're doing a photo together. He's very, I'm very, and like having that moment where I'm like, oh, should I also not? Like, should I also be
close
and
off?
It's just like, what the fuck, Elliot? What are you talking about? Like, oh, honey, you're the part of the problem.
Part of the reason this clip is so bizarre to me is because no man would be caught dead sitting around discussing what masculinity means to him. No man is musing about masculinity. Men just are. And maybe that's why this message is ultimately lost on Elliot Page. Femininity is something that women tend to think about, and it's also something that men have historically thought about when evaluating potential wives or long-term partners. Men have traditionally judged femininity based on qualities like beauty, grace, nurturing, presentation, and the characteristics that men believe make for a good wife and mother. Masculinity, on the other hand, has rarely been discussed in the same abstract way because it has historically been judged by actions rather than feelings. If you go all the way back to the ancient Greeks, masculinity wasn't something people philosophized about in casual conversation. It was demonstrated through courage, strength, sacrifice, honor, and your willingness to fight for your people. A man's value is measured by whether he could survive war, protect his family, and fulfill his obligations. Today, while society has obviously changed, the underlying expectation is still remarkably similar. Can you provide for your family? Can you put a roof over their heads? Can you protect the people who depend on you? Those are the things men are ultimately judged on. That's why there has historically been far less discussion about what masculinity means. It isn't viewed as an identity to endlessly analyze. It's something demonstrated through responsibility and action. Now, taking this a step further, when you break this down to basic relationship dynamics, and yes, this is something commonly discussed in red pill circles, and I think they get this particular point right. Women generally hold keys to sexual access, while men traditionally hold the keys to commitment, marriage, and family formation. That's why historically it's the man who gets down on one knee. He's making the decision to commit his life to one woman, build a family with her, have children, and assume responsibility for providing and protecting that household. That's also why men have historically spent far more time evaluating femininity than masculinity. They're asking themselves what qualities make someone the right partner to build a family with. That's why when I watch Elliot Page's explanation of masculinity, it honestly feels like a whole lot of words that ultimately don't mean very much. It's a word salad, a Kamala Harris word salad. It's philosophical language without a concrete definition or standard behind it. What's even funnier is watching the woman sitting next to Elliot during the interview. She keeps nodding along, but she also looks completely confused, almost like she's trying to figure out where the conversation is going. It's just a genuinely bizarre clip overall to watch. Now, more broadly, I think this reflects a much bigger problem in modern culture. This whole woke, post-Marxist, deconstructionist understanding of gender has become such a distorted way of looking at reality. It takes concepts that were once grounded in biology, history, and observable social roles and turns them into abstract identities that can apparently mean whatever someone wants them to mean in the moment that they're living through. Personally, I don't think that's healthy for individuals or for society. It doesn't really build a basis to build a society on. Now, all that being said, I honestly can't help but feel a certain amount of compassion for Elliot Page. To me, Elliot comes across as someone who seems deeply confused, deeply hurt, and genuinely searching for purpose and identity in her life. Thankfully, Elliot has had an incredibly successful acting career. That's a tremendous blessing, and not many people get to experience that level of success in their lives. But outside of acting, it almost feels like the performance has extended into every aspect of life. As a man watching this performance from Elliot, that's honestly how it comes across to me. I simply can't look at Elliot and see a man. I can't. And look, here's the thing. Someone who's 5'1" can post as many pictures as they want showing off their fake abs, their surgeries, their hormone treatments, their boxing workouts, but none of that changes the way they move, they carry themselves, or are perceived physically. To me, Elliot still doesn't look or move like a man. And I say that on a guttural level. I don't see a man in any of her actions. Now, what makes the whole situation even more striking is that Elliot has gone through years of surgeries, hormone treatments, medical procedures, and everything else involved in transitioning, only to arrive at a result that is, in my opinion, still not convincing. If anything, it feels like all of those resources ultimately failed to achieve the goal that she intended to accomplish. That's simply how I see it. Don't shoot the messenger. She went from looking like a mid chick to looking like just the kind of dude that no chick would want to date. Now, all that being said, there is another clip that's been making the rounds online. This one actually features somebody else, Lupita Nyong'o. And honestly, it may be one of the most cringe-inducing moments from this entire press tour. Anyway, here's what she had to say.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spend with them? Okay.
And then do you lean forward and look at him like that?
Yes, like, remember us?
The fact that Lupita Nyong'o is making this criticism of Homer is absolutely hilarious. This is a thoroughly wrong criticism to make because perhaps Lupita never actually read Homer's Odyssey. The reality is that Athena, the goddess of wisdom and one of the most important female figures in all of Greek mythology, drives the story from beginning to end, basically. Her fingerprints are on virtually every major event in the epic. The entire point of the Odyssey is that mortals, despite all their pride, arrogance, and greed, are ultimately playthings of the gods. They must remain humble, honorable, and obedient, or they will be punished for their hubris. Now, in that sense, Poseidon serves as the primary antagonist of the story, while Athena is, in many ways, the hero behind the hero. She repeatedly intervenes to guide Odysseus, protect Telemachus, and steer events towards justice and peace. She is arguably the single most important supporting character in the entire epic. Had Lupita actually read the source material, she probably would have known that. Now, if you're wondering why Matt Damon's character, Odysseus, gets the overwhelming majority of the screen time, the answer is actually pretty simple. The story is literally about him. The Odyssey follows Odysseus during his 10-year journey home to Ithaca after the Trojan War. Over the course of that journey, he transforms from a battle-hardened warrior into a wiser, more disciplined leader, surviving one impossible challenge after another while desperately trying to reunite with his family. Just think about everything Odysseus goes through, folks. After leaving the ruins of Troy, he leads his fleet away from the city only to sack Ismarus, the city of the Cyclones. He then escapes the Lotus Eaters after some of his men lose all desire to return home. He blinds Polyphemus, the Cyclops and son of Poseidon, bringing the sea god's wrath against him. He receives the winds from Aelus, only for his own crew to squander that gift. He barely survives the cannibalistic Laestrygonians, who destroy nearly his entire fleet. He outsmarts the witch Circe. He journeys into the underworld itself. He survives the sirens. He navigates between Scylla and Charybdis. His crew slaughters the sacred cattle of Helios, bringing about their own destruction. He spends years stranded on Calypso's island before finally escaping. He builds a raft, washes ashore on Scheria, disguises himself as a beggar upon returning to Ithaca, secretly tests the loyalty of his servants, endures humiliation inside his own home, wins the famous archery contest, slaughters the suitors trying to steal his wife and kingdom, proves his identity to Penelope, and ultimately restores peace to his household and his kingdom. So if you're disappointed because your character doesn't get as much screen time as Odysseus, I'm sorry. But the story isn't about you, Lupita. It's about the guy who spends 10 years surviving monsters, gods, shipwrecks, betrayal, temptation, and war just to get home to his wife. Not everything revolves around you, Lupita. Sorry, you freaking narcissist. Anyway, despite all of the online criticism surrounding the casting, the film is currently opening to rave reviews from the libs. Will it ultimately be successful? I honestly don't know. Like I said before in my last video, if Christopher Nolan delivers a genuinely great film, audiences will probably overlook a lot of these casting decisions because great storytelling covers a multitude of sins. But if the movie isn't good, if the story falls flat, then all of these casting choices are simply going to become memes. People are going to make fun of them. They're going to clip them endlessly online, and that's going to become a big part of the movie's legacy. Now, at the end of the day, though, life moves on. Christopher Nolan will probably still get the Oscar campaign he so desperately wants. People will move on to the next controversy, and Hollywood will keep doing what Hollywood does. And we will keep believing and putting our faith in God, Jesus Christ. Anyway, folks, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might like it or may find it interesting. Hope you have a terrific day. I'm still traveling, in case you haven't noticed. Out in Vegas. Love you all.